Thank you very much. We're going to really turn it up a little bit because I'm a little bit high energy. I need to get some feedback, and we're going to really get into this because if you spend any time around me, you're going to find one thing out. I am excited to be a Christian because I remember from where I came. I remember it very clearly, and to be here today as a Christian, a Bible-believing Christian, is just a wonderful, wonderful experience. Out of all the travels that I've been able to do, I started back in 1989 with Ken back at ICR, as a matter of fact. So it's really wonderful to be able to be here and see Steve Austin and Larry Vardaman and Dr. John Morris again. Wonderful history there. Appreciate what they do so much. But remembering back when I started back in 1989 and all of the things that have taken place up to this point, this talk was really built off of all of those experiences. Because when you travel so much, you know you're going to get questions. And one of the most commonly asked questions that I get is, well, what's the best evidence that God created? You guys have spent how long now sitting in pews or chairs and listening to all this amazing evidence? Everybody can pull into that great creation evidence bag and pull out all this amazing stuff. When you look into outer space, we take our telescopes and we look into outer space, and you cannot help but be amazed. The beauty, the complexity, the order. And we look at these things and we take them for granted. Let's be honest. The fact that you're up here at night and we've got these telescopes out here and you're able to look up into the heavens, they declare the glory of God, the beauty. You know, if there's one place that I would rather be in the world, and I'm sorry, I love y'all, but there is one place I would rather be, it's the beach. I love the beach. It's hard for me to put on a tie to talk because I'm a normal Hawaiian shirt kind of guy in shorts and on the beach. But imagine this, you and I, one day we're fortunate enough, we're walking down the beach. And we come up to this thing, and we say, wow, look at that. And I tell you, you know what? Every day, the tide comes in, the tide goes out, the wind, the rain, and it just leaves these things all over the place. It's just a... Would you accept that? Of course you're not going to accept that because you can look at that and you can know that there was intelligence behind this. Something had to make this. Now, if evolution is true, given enough time, given the right circumstances, this could happen. And so we're going to look at this a little bit differently because Job tells us, look at the beast, look at the birds, look at the earth, look at the fish. And what are they going to tell you? That the hand of the Lord has done this. We live in an amazing world. Don't take it for granted. It's beautiful. It's amazing. But what, out of all these amazing things that we're going to see, is the best evidence that God created? Who's heard of the Ouida? All right, we got a couple. They were at the talk that I was at in Illinois. The Ouida is an amazing bug. There's over 100 species of Ouida. They call it a living fossil. Because you know what? You go in the fossil record, you find the Ouida. You know what you find? The Ouida. Isn't that amazing? The bug is still a bug. And that's what the fossil record shows us. Some of them actually have tusks, like an elephant. There are 11 that are in the giant Ouida family. Why are they in the giant Ouida family? You know, it really doesn't have to do with the fact of their size because there are other characteristics that bring them into that family, but some of them are big. The poor thing, how would you like to be named after the god of bad looks? That's what he's named after. It's the heaviest insect in the world. But there are also 60 species of the cave Ouida. Now, I know you're amazed, right? You know what's so amazing about the cave Ouida? They live in caves. Hey, that's amazing, guys. It is absolutely stunning. Because when you look at these Ouida that live in the caves, you've got to understand, this is amazing. Aren't you impressed by this? You should be. You know why? Because where those caves are found, they are found at the top of mountains. What happens in the wintertime at the top of mountains? It gets cold. It freezes over. What happens to the Ouida? They go south for the winter? No, they freeze too. And they will be there for months with no brain activity, laying there. What happens come springtime? It's an epidemic, I tell you. There's no more Ouida because they're freezing off every year and they're just dying out. You read that in the newspapers? No. They thaw out, and off they go. Now, you tell me how millions of years of random chance processes is going to cause something like that to happen. I tell you, the heavens declare the glory of God. I think it's an amazing thing. But This is where you guys get to get involved. Is it the best evidence that God created? And you get to respond with? Well, that's kind of close, but it's not even close to the response that I want to hear, because I want to hear y'all. I need some energy up here tonight. It's getting kind of late. We got to go. Is it the best evidence that God created? That's the response. How many of you have heard of the Moloch Cordus? Oh, the Moloch Cordus has got to be one of the most amazing animals going. I love the Moloch Cordus. Lives in southwestern Australia. We look at it and think, oh, it's just a horned toad. No, this thing is amazing. It lives in the desert, very dry. It eats really only one food, really, one certain species of ant. But watch the way that it moves on the video here. It's very difficult to pick up. It'll move and jerk, and sometimes it'll freeze with two legs up in the air. They are an amazing, amazing animal. I know that you're looking at that and saying, wow, look at those thorns. And all. There's something even more amazing about those thorns than you can realize at this moment. Those thorns are very important, and it's not necessarily for the defense mechanism. Hang on, and I'll tell you what is more about it. Have you ever seen the Moloch before? You know, you probably have if you've watched any of the old dinosaur movies. Because what they used to do, they would film the Moloch up close and put the people in the background to make them look really big. But in actuality, they're quite small. 6 inches, maybe 8 inches, is all you're going to find on the Moloch. They are just an intriguing animal. Look at those thorns. You know what? That's not their major form of defense. Their major defense mechanism is camouflage. And the way that they move, remember when they would jerk and hold? They look like a branch that's kind of blowing across the desert. Very difficult to find them, quite honestly. But when they get into certain environments, they can change their color to fit in. You know what's so amazing? Look at that lump on the back of his neck. When he is attacked by a predator, he'll take his head, tuck it up under his leg, and then that lump on the back of his neck will stick out like a fake head. So whatever's attacking him bites the lump, doesn't hurt him, and then they go off and leave him alone. They also think that it's a way, just like a camel's hump, to store energy, and they think that they can store nutrients in there for the lean times. But now we're going to get to the amazing point. Remember those thorns? What's so amazing about those? Where did he live? Desert. What's he drink? Oh, there's ponds around, right? No. He gets the water from his ants? No. I have seen video of this. This animal will stand in damp sand. He starts working his throat. It's a pumping mechanism. Take a look at it at the very base of the thorns. You see those circles that are all around? Those are actual channels that go over the entire body. In the morning, the condensation will get on those thorns, run down to those channels. He works his throat like a pumping mechanism, draws the water from anywhere on his body up to the corner of his mouth where he then licks it in and drinks it. In damp sand, I have seen the video of this animal in damp, not standing water, damp sand. He starts working that throat, drawing the water. Look on the feet. You can see all the circles. Those are all those channels over his entire body. The water starts going up his leg, up to the corner of his mouth where he then drinks. You know, over millions of years, what? Could evolution explain something like that? No. But, you know what? Is it the best evidence that God created? Not even close, because then we can't get into things like this. What mammal can go without water longer than a camel? Or it can actually go a month without water. Powerful enough to kill a lion. Runs 30 to 35 miles an hour. Eats for 16 to 20 hours a day. Now you know why it's one of my favorite animals. I could go for that. That's a good thing. Has no vocal cords. The giraffe. The giraffe. They are unbelievable. Think about it. He's got to pump blood 18 feet into the air. 18 feet into the air sometimes. It's going to take a big heart, right? 2.5 foot long, 24 pound, 3-inch thick muscle walls. That's a lot of heart. That is unbelievable. They have 32 teeth just like you and I. And just like some hockey players, they don't have any teeth up on top. They only sleep 5 minutes at a shot, 20 minutes in an entire day. Now, I could go for the 16 to 20 hours of eating. But the 20 minutes of sleep a night, forget that. I don't want anything to do with that. Their respiration rate is 1/3 that of yours and mine. Aren't you amazed by that? You should be. Because think about it. Remember the old joke? I'm really going to date myself here. What is worse than a centipede with sore feet? A giraffe with a sore throat. That's right. If he had the same respiration rate that you and I did, and he's running 35 miles an hour, I want you to imagine when you and I go up and walk up and down a couple of flights of steps. What happens by the time we get to the third one? We're panting. If he had the same problem, he'd get windburn, sore throat. Not a good thing for a giraffe. So his respiration rate is 1/3 that of yours and mine. NASA actually studied, there's some wonderful articles in Creation Magazine on this, actually studied the giraffe to come up with the anti-gravity spacesuit. You know, when you and I stand all day, what happens? Blood pools in our ankles, swells up, not a good thing, it hurts. The giraffe never has that. His skin is so tight that it actually forces the blood back up into his body. The arteries in his legs are different from the arteries up in the upper part of his body. Now, a giraffe, you and I, we have 7 neck bones. How many neck bones in the neck of a giraffe? 7. Isn't that amazing? Aren't you shocked? And oh, it's an amazing thing. Hey, this is very important though. You know why? There's 500 pounds of muscles and tendons to make that neck work. Let's double the neck bones. If you were to give him 14 neck bones, double the weight of the neck of the giraffe and make it 1,000 pounds, I want you to think about that. Take a look at his rear end. If he had a 1,000-pound neck, he'd be walking around with the back feet up in the air. It's not a good thing. Okay, I tell you what, let's get smart then. Let's give him fewer neck bones. Let's only give him 3 neck bones. That's a good thing, right? Less weight, more maneuverable. Well, there's a big problem with that. One of the giraffe's favorite things is called necking. Now, I know y'all, it's not that kind of necking. This is a family program. This is giraffe necking. Can you imagine giving him 3 or 4 neck bones? And they go out and neck for the first time. It's an epidemic, I tell you. There's giraffes falling dead all over the plains of Africa. It's just horrible. Are you reading that in the newspapers? Of course you're not reading that, because 7 gives him the absolute best flexibility that he needs with the best weight. How did he get that long neck in the first place? Well, you know, it's really quite simple. Millions of years ago, there was this animal that was this is actually called a living fossil, the okapi, one of the supposed ancestors of the giraffe. You see, what happened was there were animals that some would have longer necks, and they could reach the leaves on the branches that were a little bit higher up, pass it on to the next generation, and over millions of years, isn't that amazing? You got the giraffe. That's so simple. I think Gary Larson had it right. Millions of years ago, giraffes had really short necks and long legs. Hey, that one makes just as much sense as the other one. It probably makes more. You know, I just look at a giraffe and you cannot help but be in awe of a giraffe. It is unbelievable. What good's a long neck without the long tongue? Can you imagine that? Let's give him the long neck, but he's only got a 6-inch long tongue. What good is that? Well, let's give him the really short neck and the really long tongue. That's not good either. You know, this is probably the hardest part of my job. I've got to actually admit to you that I have found evidence for evolution. I'm struggling with this. Maybe you guys can help me. But you see, well, it's evidence for it, right? I mean, he's got a 17-inch long tongue. Millions of years from now, the boxers are going to have a 6-foot long neck. Think about this, guys. What good is the long tongue without the long neck? I saw this dog on video, and it's a dirt magnet. He's running all over and he's dragging in the dirt, and it's just horrible. That dog would last 30 seconds in my house. He's in there, slobbers going everywhere. What good is the tongue without the neck? It doesn't make any sense. It's not any good. Anybody want to see a miracle tonight? You didn't know it, but you are going to see a miracle tonight. And hang on now, everybody, you got to hang back. I want you to sit back, because the chairs, when you get shocked, you know your tendency is to fall forward, and we don't want any of that. We don't want any. Lawsuits aren't good things. So hang on to your seats here and watch. This is a tough crowd. You guys are looking at a miracle. Absolute miracle. Because think about it. Let's be real generous tonight. Let's give millions of years to the evolutionists. Let's give the long tongue, the long neck, the lungs that are 8 times the size of yours and mine, the blood vessels 1/3 the size of yours and mine, with the red blood cells 1/3 the size of yours and mine, so they can get the oxygen much more rapidly. Let's give them all of that amazing stuff. I'm not going real deep into that. But let's give it to them. All of it. And after millions of years, there you go. You got your first giraffe. In all of his glory. He comes up to the water, and he bends down, and all the blood rushes to his head, and he's dead. That's the way it works, right? It's an epidemic, I tell you. There's giraffes dying left and right all over Africa. Do you read those headlines? Of course you don't read those headlines. You know why you don't read those headlines? Because the heavens declare the glory of God. A giraffe has got this amazing mechanisms of valves and the artery leading from the heart. So when he bends down to get that water, the blood that starts to rush towards his brain that should just kill him doesn't, because those valves, one-way valves, kick in to stop the flow of blood. Now, from the last valve to the brain, there's enough blood in that last little section to still kill him. But that doesn't happen, because at the very base of the brain, you see that wonder net? It's a mass of tiny blood vessels that catch that last little bit of blood and act like a sponge to keep it from hitting the brain and killing them. You tell me how that happens over millions of years. Random chance processes. Anybody else want to see another miracle? Yeah. Oh, good. You guys are awake. Hang on now. Sit back. Hang on. Ready? There you go. You guys, I'm telling you, this is a miracle. I used to have a young person come up and stand next to me when I was illustrating this, and I'd say, okay, I want you to stand here, and I want you to bend over, and I just want you to stand there for about 5 minutes. And while I'm talking, what would happen? He'd get a headache, he'd file a lawsuit, I wouldn't get to speak anymore, so I don't do that. Now, after I've had him standing there all this time, now I tell him, okay, now you can stand up. What's going to happen to him? Blood's going to rush out, lightheaded, he's going to fall down, break an arm, file another lawsuit, and I don't get to speak anymore. So I don't do that. It's an epidemic, I tell you, giraffes all over Africa. You read that in the newspapers. Of course not. They don't have that problem. You know why? Because, remember that sponge at the base of the brain? It diffuses just enough blood to the brain so he doesn't get lightheaded and pass out. Now, I don't know about you, but I say that the heavens declare the glory of God. And something as simple and common as a giraffe that we see all the time in the zoos. But is it the best evidence that God created? Nope, it's not even close, because then I couldn't tell you about one of my favorite animals, the emperor penguin. I love the emperor penguin. It has got to be one of the most amazing animals around. Now, it is the largest living penguin, but there are actually fossils that they find of larger penguins. What is so amazing about it is where it lives. Anybody believe me when I tell you that penguins can fly? Oh, you don't believe me? I've got video and photographic evidence it's true. Hang on, there you go. You don't like the picture? Watch the video. They're flying. Watch these guys. You're not impressed? Watch this. You're still not. Watch this guy. He's going to take off like a rocket. He'll shoot to 6 or 7 feet into the air. Now, the landings are kind of ugly. All I said is, can they fly? I didn't say how far. And you just got to listen to the question. They can fly, but it's just not very short, and it looks pretty ugly when they land. When you think about where they live, Antarctica is not a nice place. You think it gets cold here, guys? It's not even close to being a bad place when it's compared to Antarctica. I found this ad in a magazine. 100 below zero, minus 150 wind chill. It could be worse. Yeah, I could be there. That's about the only way it's going to get worse. Unbelievable. I had no idea. I'm not very smart, I admit it. I didn't know that Antarctica was a desert. I thought desert hot. That's got nothing to do with it. It's got everything to do with the amount of rainfall. Antarctica is a desert. How would you like to raise your family in Antarctica? The penguins are so unbelievable. I want you to think about this. In the wintertime, the landmass doubles. The nest of the emperor penguin inland will double in the distance from the shore to the nest. They will go to the nesting grounds. Mom will lay the egg, give it to dad. That's dad sitting there with the egg on his feet, with that little flap of skin keeping the egg warm. She leaves and goes fishing. Now, I don't know about you, but there's just something not right about that. If anybody's supposed to go fishing, it's dad. Mom gives the egg to dad, she goes fishing. And she's gone for months. Dad sits there in the middle of winter, egg on his feet, 150 mile an hour winds. Oh, come on. It's just not right. But you know what? Why would they do that? Because if they didn't do it, they wouldn't be able to survive in Antarctica. If they bred the same pattern as all the other penguins, They would have their babies just before the winter time. Those babies would have to travel 100 miles over ice to get to the ocean. Couldn't do it. Wouldn't last. Wouldn't last. But by changing it so that dad sits with the egg on his feet all through the winter, taking care of the egg, that when that baby then hatches and matures, it's now springtime, the land nest has shrunk, the baby can travel that much. Amazing. Amazing. How do they survive the winter? They are the only penguin that allows close center contact. Look at that group down at the bottom there. How about this? How do they survive? They get in that big huddle, right? And that's the way they survive. You know what? You got that 100-mile-an-hour wind coming, and they're all in that big huddle, and you got that wind coming from this direction, and they're all sitting there. What's going to happen? It's an epidemic, I tell you, all over Antarctica. Emperor penguins are just freezing, and they're just flopping left and right. Are you reading that in the newspaper? I don't think so. Because you know what happens? Remember how that guy was walking? You've got that group, and the wind's coming from this direction. He gets out, and then he walks over to the other side. He gets on the other side of the huddle. Then he works his way through the middle. Everybody takes their turn on the bad side. Everybody gets their turn on the other side and gets their turn in the middle where they can survive the whole winter. Let's get 4 churches in your neighborhood together to work on anything. You know what I'm saying? Hey, they do just fine with it. It's unbelievable. That egg sits on dad's feet just as the winter comes out of it. They go 115 days, up to 115 days without eating. Now, I've heard of the Neanderthal diet. I've heard of the Atkins diet. I've heard of all these diets, and I might need to lose some weight, but I'm not doing the penguin diet. Not happening. They'll lose up to 2/3 of their body weight. That's not good. That's pretty tough. When that baby hatches, mom has 10 days to get home. 10 days. Now, how do they know when to leave to get there to the middle of the Antarctic so that mom can take the baby to take over? Nextel? Walkie-talkies? Cell phones? How do they know that? They know. The heavens declare the glory of God. That mother will get there. She'll take the baby. When that mother comes back and gets that baby, you got to understand it is still so cold that if that baby were to fall off of the dad's feet and be exposed, it would freeze to death within 2.5 minutes. This is not a good place to live, guys. This is tough. You know, look at that. Aren't baby penguins cute? They really are cute. It's hard to think of a cuter animal. How many of you have a good friend? Almost everybody. You're thinking it's a trick question, aren't you? You guys are afraid to raise your hands now. It's okay. I've got a good friend too, and he made me feel so good. He said, "Carl, you look just like a baby penguin." Man. It's because I'm cute, right? Well, I tell you what, when you look at a penguin, they are unbelievable. They'll dive to over 1,800 feet, stay underwater for more than 15 minutes. They have got to be one of the most amazing animals around. But are they the best evidence that God created? Not even close, because then I couldn't tell you about the mimic octopus. Not just an octopus, the mimic octopus. Now, this is a neat animal, but let's first talk about just a regular octopus. An octopus in and of itself is extremely amazing. Think about the whole concept of being like this filet mignon laying on the bottom of the ocean. That's what an octopus is. They're a filet mignon. What kind of defense mechanism do you have? Well, let's squirt a little bit of ink, or let's change our texture of our skin, our color, to blend in. Just like that. That is amazing. That is unbelievable. But the mimic octopus is even more amazing. I have seen video of this where he has 2 coconut shells, and something comes to attack him. He pulls the 2 coconut halves together, and he's stuck on the inside. There's other defense mechanisms that octopus use. This one, probably you haven't seen this very often, but this one is kind of a rare defense mechanism. It's called running. You ever seen an octopus run before? I'd never seen one. I thought that was amazing. Well, you know what's so special about the mimic octopus? Well, take a look at him. He's just a little skinny, scraggly little octopus, right? You couldn't get a good bowl of soup out of that guy. He doesn't look real amazing at all. Well, remember the other octopus? They can change to fit their colors and the textures of the corals and the fans and all that amazing stuff, right? Well, what's the mimic octopus? What's he blend in with? Well, let me show you where he lives. This is an amazing place. All these really beautiful colors and corals, and you see all that up there? No. It's just a sandy bottom. What's he do? He blends in with sand, right? How boring is that? We serve an amazing God. What this mimic octopus does, watch this. Where he lives, there's sea snakes. You don't mess with a sea snake. You mess with a sea snake, he bites you, you die. Watch as the mimic tucks his legs into the sand, will stick his legs up and change the colors to pattern after a sea snake. Look at that fish there. That's a filet mignon just laying there. He's got no defense mechanism. That fish should just go up and have a free meal, and he won't do it because it's like, man, what is that? Is that a sea snake or not? I'm not going to get close enough to find out. Not only that, they'll mimic a shrimp. They'll mimic a starfish. Watch as he changes from an octopus into the starfish. And not one starfish, 3 different kinds of starfish. He'll mimic a crab. He'll mimic a jellyfish. He'll mimic a flounder. Now watch, this is video of a flounder swimming along, and then you have got to see this as he's swimming. Now, hold on. It's going to get good. Watch as you get the video up from above. You tell me you'd be able to tell that apart from anything. Unbelievable. How about this? You know, I'm really trying to figure this one out. I'm struggling with this. What is that all about? I've struggled with this one, guys. It took me a long time, but I finally figured it out. You see, what happened was, one day, the mimic octopus, he went down to the local library and he checked out the book on how to mimic. Well, I mean, if I need to learn something, I get the dummy book on how to use computers or anything else, right? So he went and got his book and checked it out. While he was there, he saw a picture of the Eiffel Tower. And well, you tell me, I don't know what it is. Where did he learn how to do that? I say the heavens declare the glory of God. It's an amazing, amazing thing. Watch a lionfish as they swim. Watch the fins as they flutter. Now watch the mimic as he swims. It is tough to tell the difference. Now, maybe you guys can tell me, what is that? Stingray? No, that's the mimic octopus mimicking the stingray. This is an amazing animal. Do some research on this. It's hard to find information on this. I've only been able to find about 4 articles and 2 or 3 videos on it because it's relatively new. Late 80s, I believe, is when they finally discovered it, and there's not a whole lot of information on it. It is an amazing animal. I've read that scientists believe he can mimic up to 17 different species. But as amazing as that is it the best evidence that God created? Not even close, because then I couldn't tell you about what hops, carries its young in a pouch, kangaroo, and is green. Gotta watch, you gotta watch. It's called the kangaroo frog. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the kangaroo, but that is a real frog there, the marsupial frog. And you know what? The marsupial frog has a pouch, just like a kangaroo. Mom will lay the eggs, Dad will fertilize them, and then puts those eggs into the pouch. You see the lumps on the back of the mom there? Those are the eggs inside of that pouch that will develop into tadpoles, into baby frogs, and then jump out of the pouch. Now, we're going to spend a little bit of time on frogs. Because come on, guys, if there's anything in the world cooler than a frog, what is it? I haven't been able to find it yet. I mean, frogs are the best. I mean, come on, guy, what guy doesn't like a frog? Have you really ever spent any kind of time thinking about how wonderful and amazing frogs are? Now, we can say frogs are cute and get away with it. That's okay. But think about how you get a lump of jelly that changes into something with gills, loses the tail, gets some legs, gets some lungs. How amazing is that? From a little lump of jelly, you get something as amazing as a frog. It is unbelievable. Scientists have found fossils of frogs, and you know what? They were frogs. I know you're shocked by that. Frogs were some frogs even 190 million years ago. I don't think so. I think that they have been frogs from the very beginning, but not 190 million years ago. I remember reading one scientist, it was tongue-in-cheek, and he said, frogs evolved the ability to jump so the dinosaurs couldn't step on them. It was tongue-in-cheek, but you know what I find interesting? Think about this. There are 2 animals in our world today that when the climate goes bad and there's something really bad going on, you know immediately, before all of your sensors can test that there's pollution in the environment, if these animals disappear, you know there's a problem. What are they? Frogs and butterflies. How in the world could the frogs survive and all these other animals die out? Such worldwide catastrophic climactic events, killing off 90% of the animals, but the frogs survived? They're one of the most sensitive animals to the climate that there is. And they survive. It doesn't work. It's just not right. Here's the glass frog. This is a really neat frog. You can see right through them. Take a look at it as you look at them from the top. How about this one? This is called the turtle frog. You know what's so amazing about the turtle frog? They live right at the base of termite mounds. They lay their egg. The babies develop into tadpoles and then hatch as a fully developed frog. They're the only frog that does that I've been able to find. Very different from all the others. There's the monkey frog. What's so special about the monkey frog? Well, without pigs, you wouldn't have monkey frogs. What? Where they live in the jungles where there's not standing water, but there are pigs. And what do the pigs do? The pigs go in and dig up these little shallow pools. So what does the monkey frog do? She lays her eggs in those pools, right? Wrong. Lays the eggs in there, pig comes in, rolls around, kills all the eggs. So what's she do? She lays them in a leaf above the pool. As the babies develop, they start to get heavy. What happens? He starts to drip down the leaf. He falls off the leaf into the little shallow pool. Now he can move to avoid getting squished by the pig. How did they figure that out? How did they know that? Then you got your Goliath frog. This is the family model. You could eat a family of 4 on the legs on this thing. This is a big frog. And then you go, I want you to see this up. You got to see this. It's a tough picture to see, but it's real. It's a Goliath frog next to a baby deer. That's a big frog. And then you've got frogs that are, when they're mature, you could put 3 of them on a nickel. The variety in frogs is unbelievable. You got frogs with heads shaped like leaves. You've got frogs that, what is that all about? Can you help me with this one? I've struggled with this. Okay, here we go. All right, somebody's attacking me. What's my defense mechanism? How did he know he had those spots back there in the first place? He's got some bifocals on that he can, rear view mirrors or something? I don't understand that. There are compounds on the poison arrow frogs that are they're so strong. They're 200 times more powerful than morphine. Unbelievable. Then you've got frogs. Do you know that there are frogs that live on every continent on this planet except one? What is it? Antarctica. There are frogs that live in the desert? Yes, there are. Frogs that live in the desert. Because there's a rainy season, and they have got to the point where when it rains, you've got the water, they lay the eggs, the babies develop and mature very rapidly. Just as the water's starting to disappear, they burrow down into the ground, cover themselves with a cocoon, and stay there for months until it rains again, when they can go up and do the whole process all over again. Now, how did they build a cocoon around themselves? How did they know what chemical to secrete to do that? Oh, it's unbelievable. I've seen video of the Australian Aborigines walking across the desert with a stick, and he's hitting the dirt, listening for that hollow sound. Here's the hollow sound, digs down, brings up the frog, breaks that cocoon, squeezes it, and drinks fresh water. Doesn't sound appetizing, but if you're living in the desert and you're thirsty, that's about what you're going to get. That's all there is to it. Do you know that there are frogs that 35 to 40% of their body can freeze and they will still survive, just like the Ouida? Pretty amazing. There's the Darwin's toad. This is a neat one. Mom lays the egg, dad fertilizes them. About a week before the babies hatch, dad comes along and swallows 6 or 7 of the eggs and holds them in his vocal sacs. That's why that front area of the father is so rounded. The babies are developing in there until they're mature, and then they jump out of dad's vocal sacs. You look like you're getting bored with the frogs. Well, I'm going to break out the big gun. If I can't impress you with this one, there is no impressing you. This is the big gun of the frog world. Here you go, the gastric brooding frog. It's not a dill pickle. It is a frog. It is an amazing frog. Think about this. Mom lays the egg. Dad fertilizes them. Mom swallows the eggs into her stomach. Now, when you and I eat something, stomach produces hydrochloric acid, breaks it down, waste. Same thing with a frog. Why doesn't that just happen with them? They think that there's an enzyme that is created on the outside of that egg that turns off the production of the stomach acids while the eggs stay inside the mother's stomach, develop into babies. Now, 26, ladies, you think childbirth is bad? How'd you like to have 26 or 27 babies inside the stomach? The stomach gets so big that it collapses the lung and she can no longer breathe through the lung. She has to absorb oxygen through her skin. This is an amazing frog. How about this? The first gastric brooding frog. The day before she swallows those eggs, she has some bad pizza. What's going to happen? Indigestion, no baby frog. How does that work out? How would something like that come about over millions of years of random chance processes, needing to know that it has to figure out some sort of enzyme to turn off the stomach acids? Guys, that doesn't make sense. I tell you, the heavens declare the glory of God. And there's a picture of that baby as it comes out of the mother's mouth. Now, this worked just fine until man got involved, and now they think that it's extinct. Unfortunately, they can't find it anymore for about the last, it's probably about 20 years now. But it was, if it's no longer with us, it was one of the most amazing frogs ever. But are the frogs the best evidence of God created? You know, when I get the opportunity to talk with young people, and I truly enjoy that, the number one answer that I get is, man, come on. You can take your telescope, and I want you to imagine, we look at the stars, and we've got the telescopes outside, and we look at the stars, and they are amazing. And it says that there are so many, you can't even count the stars. You take a grain of sand, and you hold it at arm's length. You hold that grain of sand out, and they took a photograph into space. And that amount of space that was covered, this is the picture that came back. And you know what they found in that tiny speck? 1,500 more stars, right? No, 1,500 more galaxies. The heavens declare the glory of God. But God says that He created the stars also, just kind of an afterthought. Yeah, I created this, I created that, I created this, and I made the stars too, by the way. We look at the stars and we're amazed. Well, you turn that telescope into a microscope and you look inside the human body, and you cannot watch as a child develops and not know that there's a God. The complexity being knit together in our mother's womb. The Lord tells us that He made us. He knew us before we were born. He knit us together in our mother's womb. And when you watch the way that we are made, it screams that there's a God. The human body is so unbelievable. 206 bones, 650 muscles, 100 trillion cells. Your heart's going to beat an average of 3 billion times in your lifetime. 1,500 miles of airways. It is unbelievable. I wish that I were intelligent enough to talk to you about the brain. I can't. I can't. I wish that I were smart enough to talk to you about the heart, the way that the valves have to work in sync. It is unbelievable. You and you realize that when God said that He created you and I, the words that He used, that we were His masterpiece? Yeah, I made the stars, but you were my masterpiece. Unbelievable. The human eye, one tiny speck of information. Your eye, in order for you to see, there are 3 motions that have to take place. Tremors, drifts, and saccades. One of them alone, the tremors, 30 to 70 times a second, your eye has to twitch so that you can see. The fact, I don't care how bored you are tonight, the fact that you can see this presentation and you can hear this presentation is a gift from God. Do not take it for granted. There are millions of people that don't have that gift anymore. And you don't appreciate it until you start losing it. Remember the carving? Would you read that to me, please?
Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you, Jesus. You know what? The fact that we see that writing on there, and you can read that, this is the argument that we have to understand, guys. The fact that you can read that screams that there's a creator. Because evolution is going to say, given enough time, right circumstances, that kind of a formation could happen. But when you get the language, you know what? It's impossible. Languages never evolve by chance. Never. Languages require an intelligence. There has to be an intelligence to give you a language and a language system. This is very important because you need to understand, as amazing as these animals that I've shown you and these really neat features are, there's some big problems too, because some of those features can be used for ugliness, of killing, of ripping and tearing. And that's not good. But when you look inside the human body, do you know what you find when you look inside of DNA, just discovered 50 years ago? You see a language. Your body screams from the most minute level that there's a creator God. There's enough information capacity in a single human cell to store the Encyclopedia Britannica, all 30 volumes of it, 3 or 4 times over. You are amazing, fearfully and wonderfully made. God says in Colossians, from the invisible and the visible and invisible things, we know that there's a God. Do you know, I've heard that old saying for a long time, that the devil is in the detail. Do you know how wrong that is? God is in the detail. God is in the detail. You look at anything that man has made under a microscope, it looks like junk. It's terrible. The closer you get, the worse it looks. You look at what God has created under a microscope. And the closer you get, even from an eye of a mosquito, the more amazing it is. Fearfully and wonderfully made. But you know what? You and I aren't even the best evidence that God created. We're not even close. We're not even close to the best evidence that God created. You want to know what it is? The best evidence that God created is His Word. You see, here's the problem. Too many of us are looking for that evidence to prove the Bible. It doesn't work that way. You use the Bible to understand the evidence. You use the Bible to understand the world that we live in. Because if you want to argue about the fish and the birds and the rocks, every time they find a new bird, a new fish, and a new rock, you're in an argument again. When you start from the one who's always been there, who told you what happened, you can know that God created. Do you know why? Because in the beginning, God created. For every house is built by some man, but he that built all things is God. His Word tells us, and you can trust it. And we know that it's true because Romans tells us that we're without excuse. You can use good things the wrong way. You ever thought about that? It's working, right? But let me ask you this. Do you want to be on it in a storm? I don't think so, because you're going to suck a lot of water, and that's not a good thing. Well, if you try to use the Bible as just a good book with good moral teachings and good values, it's the same thing. Because what we have is the Word of God. From creation, we can know the power of God. The heavens declare the glory of God. But you know what? There are millions of people that believe in monotheistic religions who believe in a creator who are going to hell because they haven't accepted Jesus Christ, who revealed himself as the creator, redeemer, sustainer. That's where it comes down to. Creation is amazing. It's wonderful. But only from the Word of God can you know the nature of God. That's why we live in this world where we see those ugly things of killing and suffering and tearing. Because we know God's nature from the beginning, what it was like in the beginning. That's not the way that it's always been. We know that when we look at the world today, we can't extrapolate back to know what it was like in the past. We have to understand that the one who's always been there, who told us what happened, who is God, gave us His revelation so that we can know what it's like. And so we can understand why we see beauty, but we see ugliness as well. The ugliness isn't God's fault. It's our fault. Our sin. Very important. Because you see, not only did God tell us that He created, but He also told us how He created, and we have to be able to accept God at His word. We have the true history book of the universe. That's the message that I leave with you. That's what I encourage you to know, that your Heavenly Father loves you, and you can trust His word. Thank you for staying up late. I know this is a late night, and I'm just honored that you guys would stick with me that long. So thank you very much.